Hello friends. Now I'll talk about how to study mysticism. The lecture is divided into 3 sections. First, I will discuss the background of the concept. Then, I'll be giving the critical overview with reference to mysticism. Finally, I would explain the concept of mysticism with reference to other allied concepts. Therefore, the objective of this module is to make the readers aware of the concepts allied with mysticism, as there is a tendency of confusing mysticism with religion, occultism, spirituality, Gnosticism, and Esotericism. Therefore, it is to be understood with reference to these concepts. At the same time, one is expected to suspend his or her intellectual or rational mind to understand this concept in a better manner. It is more of realization and experience. It has nothing to do with intellect. There had been a lot of discussion on mysticism in the past. The Vedic seers had expressed their mystic sentiment in the form of poetry. Plotinus had also discussed in detail about the self in his 6 Enneads, which is a collection of his writings compiled by his student in 270 AD. Let us now see a passage from the first tractate of his first Aeneid. Quote, "Soul, though one undivided in the all, as being present to bodies in division, in so far as any bodies are animates, the soul has given itself to each of the separate material masses, or rather it appears to be present in the bodies by the fact that it shines into them. It makes them living beings, not by merging into body, but by giving forth, without any change in itself, images or likenesses of itself, like one face caught by many mirrors." Unquote. Here we see that Plotinus was a mystic, and he spoke in the same line with the Vedic seers, as they also had explained their mystic realization of the soul in the Gita and in the Upanishads. But the term was not known to anyone. Any kind of mystical experience had been equated with religious sentiment. Critics like Jacques de Marquet and Louis Dupré believe that the religion is the basis of any mystical experience. It is true to some extent, as we are influenced by the images and the ideas of the religion we belong to. But mystic realization is more than that. Mysticism deals with a deeper realization of the Supreme, whereas religion is concerned with the ways of worshipping a particular deity. According to Emil Durkheim, quote, "A religion is a unified system of beliefs and practices relative to sacred things, that is to say, things set apart and forbidden, beliefs and practices which unite one single moral community called a church." In mysticism, we do not find any intervention from any institution like the church or the temple or the mosque. Mysticism is a personal experience of a seer. According to Professor Arthur Verslewis, mysticism is the purest form of esotericism, an inner dimension of religious experience, clearly distinguished from ritual or institutional religious practice. And it also represents direct experiential individual Gnostic insight into the nature of the cosmos and of the divine. We see him explaining it as an inner dimension of religious experience, and he also dissociates it from institution and rituals. Mysticism primarily deals with our inner self. Hence, there are 2 schools of thought on mysticism. Critics like Stephen Katz say that mystical experience is a sociolinguist construct, while Professor Versluis says there are more to it. He says that any mystical piece of writing is a record of vision and inner transformation. We can cite examples from Rabindranath Tagore, where he writes about his transformative mystical experience. Let us now see a passage from Tagore's Religion of Man. He writes, "When I was 18, a sudden spring breeze of religious experience for the first time came to my life and passed away, leaving in my memory a direct message of spiritual reality. One day, while I stood watching at early dawn the sun sending out its rays from behind the trees, I suddenly felt as if some ancient mist had, in a moment, lifted from my sight, and the morning light on the face of the world revealed an inner radiance of joy. The invisible screen of the commonplace was removed from all things and all men, and their ultimate significance was intensified in my mind. And this is the definition of beauty. That which was memorable in his experience was its human message, the sudden expansion of my consciousness." With reference to the quoted passage from Rabindranath Tagore, we can say that the mysticism is not fully a sociolinguistic phenomenon, but the language helps the mystics to transcribe their thoughts. Therefore, we can say that the language and the cultural upbringing of a mystic influence his or her thought process, but we cannot ignore the transformative and the intuitive experience that the mystic undergoes. Similar passages of mystical experience are evident in the writings of Bernadette Roberts, Sufi mystics, Paulo Coelho, Walt Whitman, Swami Vivekananda, and Sri Aurobindo. Bernadette Roberts, in her book entitled What is Self, talks about no self state, that there is ultimately a state of no ego. I quote, "What characterizes the unitive state is the love, charity, and compassion of egoless giving and living. But what characterizes the no self condition is the knowledge of the ultimate truth as it lies beyond all self." Unquote. This state of no self is the condition for a mystic to realize the supreme. Now, let us move on to discuss the concept of mysticism with reference to other allied concepts like religion, spirituality, esotericism, Gnosticism, and occultism. First, we have to keep in mind that mysticism has nothing to do with religious rituals, scriptures, theology, and sacrament. Mysticism is the art of union with the divine, or the truth, or the reality. Many critics equate it with esoteric knowledge. The word esoteric has derived from the Greek word esoterikos, meaning within, or the secret teaching. Mysticism comes from the umbrella of esotericism as it deals with our inner consciousness. Mysticism is also referred to as occultism sometimes, but occultism involves magic and alchemy. Occult practitioners often manipulate the natural phenomena for their benefit. Mysticism is nothing like that. It is associated with our self and consciousness. It starts with an all-embracing love for the creation. Even mysticism is not related to Gnosticism. A Gnostic believes that this world is a place of pain and suffering. A human being is trapped into it. The objective of a Gnostic is to return to God. But a mystic is in love with this mundane world. The salvation of a mystic lies in the expansion of his self with an aim to embrace the world and to move within, as well as to be united with the Lord seated inside. Therefore, as a reader, we need to know that it is an experiential knowledge. The experience may vary from individual to individual. It is also transformative and deals with ontological reality. These criteria are known as perennialist perspectives of mysticism by the popular theorists. There is another aspect of mysticism as discussed by the popular critic like Aldous Huxley. According to Huxley, mysticism is a drug-induced state, and he talks of his mescaline experience in a book entitled The Dose of Perception, which came out in 1954. One can have a mystical experience after consumption of drugs, but this view is not acceptable by many. As we know, drugs and alcohol will never transform one's consciousness, and the state of intoxication does not lead one to the state of cosmic consciousness and union with the divine. Rather, one loses self-control in the drug-induced state. Mysticism lies on the borderline of spirituality, and it makes one prepared for the spiritual realization. So, you have to be cautious about the implications of the allied concepts while studying mysticism. It is more of intuitive experience concerned with individual perception. Thank you.